Black woman stands up to corrupt cops. Court freezes when she reveals who she is. $1 million lawsuit. Philadelphia's Market Street bustles from dawn till dusk. A tapestry of sights and sounds that never truly sleeps. Beneath the blinking neon signs of local diners and the rattling of subway cars, life moves at a relentless pace. People heading to work. Students meeting up for coffee at the corner Starbucks. Tourists snapping photos of historical landmarks. But for one woman, a moment that should have been mundane and unremarkable transforms into a harrowing ordeal. Her name is Vanessa Harrington, and within the span of a single morning, she goes from hopeful entrepreneur to victim of police misconduct, launching a battle that ignites a city, tests her resolve, and sends shockwaves across the nation. Vanessa Harrington believed in the power of new beginnings. After all, she'd moved to Philadelphia from her small hometown in South Carolina with little more than a suitcase and a dream. The city of brotherly love was meant to be her launchpad to something bigger. She was determined to open her own bakery, a lifelong aspiration fueled by years of perfecting cupcake recipes in her grandmother's kitchen. Every evening she pored over business plans, searching for affordable commercial spaces, and hoping to secure enough funds to bring her dream to life. But for now, she worked as a cashier at a local bookstore on Market Street. It wasn't glamorous, and it barely paid enough to keep her afloat, but it was honest work. The bookstore's manager, Gina Martinez, valued Vanessa's warmth and her ability to put customers at ease. Vanessa greeted regulars with a smile and helped them find the latest releases, occasionally sneaking in a sweet treat she'd baked the night before. Customers adored her. Gina felt lucky to have someone so passionate and kind on staff. On a brisk Wednesday morning in early spring, Vanessa decided to treat herself to a latte from Starbucks, just around the corner from the bookstore. She stepped out of her small studio apartment, the day's first rays of sun catching the gentle curls in her hair. Dressed in a neat navy blouse and comfortable flat shoes, she navigated the sidewalks of Market Street with a slight bounce in her step. The city, awake and clamoring, seemed to match her mood, hopeful, energetic, and bright. Yet as she entered Starbucks, she couldn't shake a strange sense of tension thickening the air. She noticed two uniformed police officers standing near the condiment station, talking in hushed tones. Nothing seemed particularly out of the ordinary. Philadelphia's cops were everywhere, ensuring safety in the busy downtown. But for some reason these officers watched her intently. Vanessa tried to ignore it. She placed her order, paid, and waited near the counter, fiddling with the strap of her purse. The officers continued to whisper, occasionally glancing her way. An icy bead of anxiety crept up her spine, but she forced a confident posture. She'd done nothing wrong. She was just grabbing a coffee before work. When the barista called her name, she grabbed her latte, offered a polite nod to the officers, and left. The moment she stepped back into the swirl of foot traffic on Market Street, relief washed over her. The city was busy enough that she could dissolve into the crowd, and soon enough, she was focusing on the day ahead. 40 minutes later, Vanessa was behind the register, scanning books for a swarm of morning customers. Gina was organizing a new fiction display near the store entrance. Quiet classical music drifted from the overhead speakers, lending a cozy atmosphere that kept tourists lingering in the aisles. "Hey, Vanessa, do you mind checking the storeroom for the new cookbooks we got in? A few customers have asked," Gina called. Vanessa nodded, excused herself from the register, and made her way to the storeroom in the back. She found the box of cookbooks easily and was busy breaking down the cardboard packaging when she heard the jingle of the front door. Thinking it was just another customer, she continued working. A moment later, Gina's voice turned tense. "Excuse me, officers, can I help you with something?" Vanessa felt her heart dip. Slowly, she emerged from the storeroom. Standing near the entrance were the same two officers from Starbucks. They looked around until their eyes settled on Vanessa. One of them, a stout man with a buzz cut, stepped forward and pointed directly at her. "That's her," he said. The store fell silent. A few customers put down the books they were browsing. Gina, eyes wide, approached the cops. "Officers, what exactly is going on here?" The shorter cop didn't answer Gina. Instead, he addressed Vanessa in a clipped tone. "Ma'am, we have a few questions for you. Please step outside." Vanessa's mouth felt dry. Her mind whirled. Questions about what? She set down the open box, dusted her hands on her jeans, and walked cautiously toward them. Every eye in the store was on her. She could sense the tension thickening. "Is there a problem?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "We just need to speak to you outside," the taller officer said. He glanced at the customers as if wanting privacy. Vanessa turned to Gina, who looked ready to protest, but Vanessa nodded, a silent reassurance that she would handle this. Outside, the street noise swallowed them. Car engines, honking horns, snippets of conversation. The officers guided Vanessa to a relatively quiet corner by a lamppost. "Is there an issue?" Vanessa repeated, more forceful this time. The shorter officer, whose name tag read O'Leary, pulled out a small notepad. "We received a report of shoplifting in the area. A witness described a suspect who matches your description." Vanessa's mind reeled. "Shoplifting? Where?" "In a couple of stores along Market Street." The taller cop, Officer Mendez, answered, crossing his arms. "We followed you from Starbucks." Vanessa's voice trembled with indignation. "You were following me? Look, I haven't stolen anything. I work here at the bookstore." Officer O'Leary raised an eyebrow. "So you say." Heat flared beneath Vanessa's skin. She knew how this must appear. A young black woman singled out in public. Her mind cycled through the countless stories of racial profiling she'd read about. The anxiety in her stomach coiled tighter. "You can come inside and speak with my manager if you'd like," Vanessa insisted. "I've been working. I have receipts for my coffee if you want to see them." "We'll see about that," O'Leary muttered. At that moment, Gina stepped out, arms folded defiantly. "Officers, is there something you need? Because Vanessa has a job to do and I need my employee." Her voice was biting, protective. Mendez glanced at Gina, then back at O'Leary. He gave a short nod. "We'll let you know if we need anything further, ma'am." To Vanessa, he added, "Don't go anywhere. We'll be around if more questions come up." With that, the two officers walked away. Vanessa's heart pounded. Gina placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay?" Vanessa took a moment to breathe. "I'm fine. Just shocked." "Let's go back inside," Gina said gently, guiding her into the store. "You have nothing to worry about if you did nothing wrong." Vanessa nodded, but deep down she felt a pang of fear. She'd done nothing, yet that morning had taken such a sour turn. Trying to brush it off, she returned to her station, but the stares of a few lingering customers told her that this was far from over. News spreads fast, especially in a neighborhood where small businesses and close-knit communities thrive. Within hours, regular customers at the bookstore were asking Vanessa if she was okay. Some whispered about the cops cornering her outside, and rumors blossomed. A few sympathetic patrons lamented the discrimination they suspected was at play. Vanessa tried her best to remain composed. She'd grown up learning how to maintain grace under pressure. Her grandmother used to warn her that, as a black woman in America, she'd have to fight twice as hard to prove her worth. Yet no amount of mental preparation could erase the humiliation of being confronted like a criminal in front of coworkers and strangers. During her lunch break, she slipped out of the bookstore to grab a quick sandwich from a deli next door. She checked over her shoulder more than once, irrationally worried those same cops might be following her again. But the sidewalk was empty of uniformed officers. Still, a gnawing unease followed her. Clutching her sandwich, she dashed back to the break room. Gina was waiting inside. She closed the door behind Vanessa. "Listen, if you want to go home early or anything, just say the word." Vanessa mustered a small smile. "I'll be okay. But, did they come back?" Gina shook her head. "No, not yet. But we've had calls from some of the local shops. It looks like there really was shoplifting going on this morning. A few stores reported missing electronics or accessories. But no one I talked to gave a description that matches you exactly." Vanessa swallowed hard. "So why target me?" Gina's lips pressed into a thin line. Because that's what they do sometimes. They see someone who fits a vague description, and they run with it, especially if that person looks like you. It's not right, and I'm sorry. A sudden wave of emotion threatened to bring tears to Vanessa's eyes, but she pushed it down. She refused to cry at work. It's okay, she said, though it wasn't. Let's just get back to it. Despite Gina's supportive presence, the rest of Vanessa's shift was marred by tension. The typical chatter in the store felt subdued. Customers offered her polite smiles. Some looked nervous, as though stepping into a conflict that wasn't theirs but wanting to offer comfort anyway. Every time the door chimed, Vanessa's heart would skip a beat, expecting the officers to return. When 5 p.m. rolled around, she clocked out with shaky relief. Gina walked with her to the exit. "Do you want me to walk you home?" the manager asked. Vanessa shook her head. "I'll be fine." She wasn't sure if she believed that, but she needed the solitude of the bustling street to clear her head. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. Vanessa's tiny studio apartment was in a 3-story brick building sandwiched between a Thai takeout place and a laundromat. She normally found comfort in the narrow hallway, the chipped paint, and the faint aroma of simmering spices from the restaurant next door. But that night, everything felt claustrophobic. After showering and changing into comfortable sweats, she tried to distract herself with a new cupcake recipe. Baking had always been her form of therapy, a tactile, creative process that drew her focus away from stress. She'd wanted to test a sweet cornbread cupcake with honey glaze, something she planned to one day feature in her bakery. But each time she stirred the batter, her mind flickered back to the cop's accusatory gazes. She recalled O'Leary's sneer and the subtle aggression in his voice. Then there was Mendez, who said little but exuded an unsettling energy. Why had they honed in on her so strongly? She nearly dropped the mixing bowl when her phone buzzed. Setting aside the whisk, she glanced at the screen. It was her grandmother calling from back home. "Hey, Grandma," Vanessa greeted, trying to sound upbeat. "Hello, honey," came the warm, gentle voice. "Just checking in. You doing okay?" Vanessa paused, debating whether to share the day's events. She worried her grandmother, who had always been fiercely protective of her. But honesty won out. She explained the run-in with the police, her voice trembling ever so slightly. Her grandmother listened quietly before letting out a weary sigh. "Vanessa, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Are you safe right now?" "Yes, I'm at home." Her grandmother paused. "Well, you do what you have to do. If this continues, you speak up. You hear me? You're a good girl. We both know that. Don't let them take your dignity." Vanessa's eyes grew misty. "Thanks, Grandma. I love you." They chatted a bit longer, talking about mundane family updates to lighten the mood. After the call ended, Vanessa took a deep breath and stared at her half-finished batter. Suddenly, baking felt unimportant. She packed the mixture away, deciding to finish it in the morning. Curling up on her worn love seat with a blanket, she tried to watch some light-hearted TV, but her phone buzzed again, this time a text from Gina. "Vanessa, please be careful going into work tomorrow. I heard the cops are still patrolling around the area. If you feel uncomfortable, let me know." Vanessa typed back a quick, "Thanks, will do," but her anxiety only deepened. She switched off the television, letting the darkness cradle her. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her, and she drifted into a restless sleep, haunted by the feeling that the worst was yet to come. Early the next morning, a tentative sun tried to pierce the heavy clouds. Vanessa woke with a knot in her stomach, the memory of yesterday's events washing over her anew. She forced herself through her usual routine, left her apartment, and found the streets just as busy as always. But her senses felt heightened, every glance sharper. She arrived at the bookstore to find Gina pacing by the front window, phone pressed to her ear. When Gina spotted Vanessa, she hung up quickly. "Vanessa, good. Listen, the police were here again, asking about you if you've come in yet." Vanessa felt her pulse skyrocket. "But why? I told them I haven't done anything." Gina shook her head, exasperated. "I know. I told them the same. They claim they're just following up. I'm not sure what they're fishing for. Vanessa set her purse behind the counter, her mind racing. This is ridiculous. Are they going to keep harassing me? Before Gina could respond, the shop door swung open. In strode Officers O'Leary and Mendez, their expressions grim. The few morning customers hushed, pretending to browse while clearly eavesdropping. Officer O'Leary stepped forward. "Miss Harrington, we'd like to have another word with you, somewhere private if you don't mind." Vanessa's cheeks burned. Gina cut in. "I'll show you to our break room." She gave Vanessa a worried glance. "I'll be right here if you need me." The break room, a cramped space with a small table and microwave, offered little privacy, but at least it was away from the public eye. O'Leary closed the door behind them, and Mendez remained by the doorway, his posture stiff. O'Leary clicked his pen. "We've confirmed multiple thefts on Market Street. Witnesses indicated someone wearing clothing similar to yours." Vanessa interrupted, voice heated. "There must be hundreds of women wearing a navy blouse in Philadelphia." "Don't get smart," O'Leary snapped, scribbling in his notepad. "The more you cooperate, the better." Vanessa inhaled sharply. "I'm telling you, I didn't steal anything. I was working here. You can check the timesheets. You can look at security cameras if you want." Mendez finally spoke, his tone deceptively calm. "We already have. The cameras show a woman wearing a navy blouse near a jewelry store that was robbed. The footage is grainy, but the figure does resemble you." "I wasn't near any jewelry store yesterday. I went to Starbucks, then straight here. Gina can vouch for me." O'Leary shrugged. "We'll see if the timeline checks out. In the meantime, stay in town. We might need you to come down to the station for further questioning." Anger flared within Vanessa. "I'm not some flight risk. I live here, I work here, and I'm going to open a bakery here one day." Mendez flipped his notebook shut. "We'll let you know if we find anything that proves your whereabouts conclusively. Till then, keep your phone on." They turned to leave, and O'Leary paused at the door. He eyed Vanessa with something bordering on contempt. "If we find out you're lying, this is going to get real bad, real fast." Vanessa felt her eyes sting with tears, but she kept them in check. The officers marched out, their footsteps echoing down the hallway. Gina pushed into the break room a moment later, her face flushed. "I was standing right outside. I heard everything. They can't just accuse you like this without proof." Vanessa sank into a chair. "I need to prove I'm innocent. But how?" Gina rubbed Vanessa's back reassuringly. "We'll start by pulling the bookstore's security footage to show the exact times you were on the premises. Maybe we can also get footage from Starbucks. We'll gather everything." Vanessa exhaled, shaky but resolved. "Yes, let's do that." Over the next few days, Vanessa and Gina embarked on a mini investigation of their own. Gina managed to get access to the bookstore's security recordings, which clearly showed Vanessa behind the register during the times of the reported thefts. They also visited the Starbucks location, where the store manager was sympathetic enough to let them review the footage. That too showed Vanessa entering, placing an order, and leaving at times that contradicted the police's claims. Still, all this footage needed to be compiled, labeled, and verified if it was to stand up against the cops' accusations. Gina spent hours on her phone, calling local shops, trying to figure out if any had a camera angle that might capture the real thief outside on the street. Meanwhile, Vanessa painstakingly recreated her timeline on the day of the alleged thefts, from the moment she left her apartment to the exact time she clocked in at the bookstore. As word spread around the neighborhood, people began to rally behind Vanessa. Local shop owners who recognized her as a friendly face came forward to say they'd never seen her behaving suspiciously. A few even offered their own camera footage for the day in question. The outpouring of support made Vanessa feel less alone. Yet the cops continued to loom like a storm cloud over her life. O'Leary and Mendez frequently walked past the bookstore window, sometimes peering in as though checking if she was there. Their presence rattled Vanessa, and she struggled to maintain her usual upbeat demeanor. One afternoon, as Vanessa was shelving a new romance novel, she heard a whisper from behind. "Hey." "Sorry to bother you," said a tall black man wearing a mail carrier uniform. He'd been browsing in the store earlier. "I saw those officers giving you trouble the other day. I'm a mailman in this area. Name's Leonard. If you need a statement, I can confirm you were here around noon that day. I come in around that time to pick up new reading material for my break." Vanessa's eyes widened in gratitude. "That might help, Leonard. Thank you so much." He nodded firmly. "Folks around here know you aren't a thief. Sometimes people in power like to create their own narratives." Leonard's words struck a chord. Vanessa thanked him profusely and watched him go. Her spirits lifted. She added Leonard's potential testimony to her growing list of evidence. If this went any further, if the cops tried to actually file charges, she intended to be ready. A week passed without any official warrant or charge, but the harassment persisted. The final straw came on a day when Vanessa's shift ended late due to a last-minute inventory check. She left the bookstore around 9 p.m., the sky dark and the streetlights buzzing overhead. Tired and hungry, she trudged down Market Street, hoping to grab a quick bite from a nearby food truck before heading home. The neighborhood was calmer at this hour, with fewer cars and pedestrians. The city's nighttime pulse seemed slower, more deliberate. She spotted a familiar taco truck at the corner and was about to cross the street when a harsh spotlight flared behind her. A police cruiser. It inched along the curb, matching her pace. Her heart hammered. She tried to ignore it, turning up a side street to take a longer route. The cruiser followed, headlights blazing. Then came the burst of a siren and flashing blue and red lights. Fear coursed through her as she halted on the sidewalk. The cruiser pulled up, and Officer O'Leary stepped out, shining a flashlight in her face. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded. Vanessa shielded her eyes. "Home. Why are you stopping me?" "Got a call about suspicious activity in the area," she scoffed. "Suspicious activity? I'm walking with my purse going to get tacos. That's suspicious to you?" His grip on the flashlight tightened. "Watch your tone." The passenger door opened and Mendez emerged, quietly standing behind O'Leary. Vanessa noticed something off about Mendez's posture, like he was conflicted, uneasy. She mustered courage. "Look, I've had enough of this. You've been following me, accusing me of things I didn't do." In a flash, O'Leary grabbed her arm. "Keep your voice down," he hissed, twisting it sharply. Pain shot from her elbow to her shoulder. Vanessa cried out, "You're hurting me! Let go!" He yanked her closer, leaning in. "I told you not to get smart. Now I'm going to search your bag to make sure you're not carrying stolen goods." Panicked, Vanessa yanked her arm away, stumbling back. "That's illegal. You need probable cause or a warrant, or at least a reason to think." O'Leary lunged forward, grabbing her by the shoulders. Before Vanessa could fully process what was happening, her back collided with the side of the cruiser. She winced, tears springing to her eyes. This was a nightmare. Mendez took a step forward, but hesitated. "O'Leary, calm down. Stay out of this," O'Leary barked. He pinned Vanessa to the car with alarming force. "You want to resist arrest, huh? That's another charge." Vanessa's voice cracked. "I'm not resisting. Please stop." A small group of bystanders had formed on the sidewalk, murmuring in confusion and alarm. Some held up their phones, recording. Mendez glanced at them, then back to O'Leary, panic creeping into his features. "People are filming," he muttered. O'Leary seemed too enraged to care. He wrenched Vanessa's arm behind her back. Pain radiated through her shoulder. "Turn off those cameras," he shouted at the onlookers, but none complied. Most kept filming, demanding O'Leary let her go. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mendez placed a hand on O'Leary's shoulder. "Enough," he said, voice low. The tension between them was palpable. Slowly, O'Leary released Vanessa, who slid down the side of the cruiser, gasping for breath. "You should watch yourself," O'Leary growled at her, then pivoted and marched back to the driver's seat. Mendez lingered for a moment, seeming torn between following his partner and checking on Vanessa. But eventually, he climbed into the passenger seat, and the cruiser roared away. Vanessa was left trembling on the sidewalk, tears of humiliation and pain streaking her cheeks. The bystanders rushed over, some offering help, others raging about the cops' brutality. Someone handed her a phone, the screen still recording. "I got everything," they said softly. "We'll send you the footage." She nodded, fighting back sobs. Her body ached, but the emotional toll was worse. The anger, the fear, the sense of betrayal from those who were supposed to protect her. It all crashed down like a suffocating wave. She accepted a ride from one of the witnesses, who promised to drive her to the nearest hospital or back home if she preferred. Vanessa, shaken, decided she needed medical documentation of any injuries. That decision would later prove crucial. The night of the assault, Vanessa spent several hours in the emergency department. Though she didn't have any fractures, she suffered a bruised shoulder and strained ligaments. The nurse asked her if she wanted to report the incident. Vanessa hesitated, but knew she had to. "Yes," she whispered, giving a detailed statement about the attack. Word spread like wildfire, partly thanks to social media. Videos posted by bystanders quickly went viral. The footage of a visibly distraught black woman being manhandled by a police officer on a Philadelphia street ignited fury across the city. Hashtags demanding justice for Vanessa started trending locally. Community organizers and civil rights groups took notice, reaching out to offer assistance. Among those who reached out was a lawyer named Kayla Brooks, a well-respected civil rights attorney who had taken on high-profile cases in the city. She left a message at the bookstore, urging Vanessa to call her back. Gina passed on the message the next morning. Vanessa, overwhelmed, listened to Kayla's voicemail, in which the attorney explained she'd seen the footage and was prepared to help. With trembling hands, Vanessa dialed Kayla's number. The phone rang twice before a composed, assertive voice answered. "Hello, Vanessa, this is Kayla Brooks. I'm so sorry for what happened to you." Vanessa closed her eyes, relief flooding her. "Thank you. I feel lost." "You're not alone," Kayla said firmly. "I want to meet. Let's talk about what we can do to hold these officers accountable." They arranged a meeting at Kayla's downtown office for that evening. When Vanessa arrived, she found Kayla to be a tall, poised black woman in her early 40s, wearing a sharp navy suit. Her walls were lined with legal degrees and commendations, as well as pictures of her with community leaders. "Take a seat," Kayla said, offering Vanessa a warm smile. "Can I get you coffee, tea, water?" Vanessa shook her head, anxiety twisting her stomach. She sank into a plush chair, crossing her arms protectively over her chest. Kayla perched on the edge of her desk. "I've reviewed the footage and I've spoken to a few witnesses. Your story is compelling, and the video evidence is damning for those officers. They had no probable cause, no warrant, and used excessive force. This is a clear-cut civil rights violation." Vanessa's voice wavered. "I don't have a lot of money for legal fees." Kayla waved the concern away. "Don't worry about that right now. I handle many cases pro bono, especially when there's a strong constitutional issue at play. I believe we can build a case that not only addresses their excessive force, but also their continuous harassment, which amounts to racial profiling." Vanessa blinked back tears. "Thank you. I didn't even know if I could fight this." Kayla leaned forward, eyes blazing with conviction. "You can, and you will. We'll file a lawsuit against the officers, the precinct they belong to, and the city for negligence and violation of your civil rights. I think we have grounds to sue for at least $1 million in damages, if not more, if you're open to that." Vanessa's eyes went wide. $1 million? That sounds huge. They need to understand the gravity of their actions. Money speaks, especially to city officials who would rather sweep these cases under the rug. We also want to send a message that this kind of misconduct can't be tolerated. Are you ready to proceed? Though she felt overwhelmed, Vanessa thought about her grandmother's words. Don't let them take your dignity. She took a deep breath, nodding. Yes, let's do it. Filing a lawsuit against law enforcement isn't simple. Kayla walked Vanessa through the labyrinthine steps involved, drafting a formal complaint outlining the civil rights violations, collecting and preserving evidence, interviewing witnesses, gathering medical records, obtaining police records that could show a pattern of misconduct by O'Leary or Mendez. It was a monumental undertaking, but Kayla's firm had resources and a network of allies eager to assist. One crucial element Kayla insisted on was finding any potential skeletons in the cops' closets. She tapped into her legal channels and discovered that O'Leary had been the subject of 2 previous excessive force complaints, both of which were dismissed. Mendez had a relatively clean record, but Kayla suspected he was complicit by not intervening. The formal lawsuit read, Vanessa Harrington versus Officers James O'Leary, Carlos Mendez, the Glendale Police Precinct in the city of Philadelphia. The precinct name was fictional, though they operated in Philly territory. The accusations included racial profiling, harassment, violation of civil liberties, and excessive force. As soon as the lawsuit hit the news, local media ran with the story. Protests began forming outside the Glendale Police Precinct, with community leaders demanding accountability. The city's mayor made a cautious statement urging calm, while promising a thorough internal investigation. The police union predictably released a statement defending the officers, claiming the footage was out of context. Vanessa's life became a swirl of phone calls, interviews, and depositions. She took a leave of absence from the bookstore, partly because Kayla advised her to, and partly because the media attention made work impossible. Gina supported her fully, reassuring her that her job would be waiting whenever she returned. Not everyone was supportive, however. Some internet commenters and local naysayers accused Vanessa of seeking a payday, or of fabricating a sob story for fame. Anonymous social media accounts hurled racist insults. It hurt deeply, but Kayla urged her to ignore the trolls. They thrive on conflict, don't feed them, she said. Still, Vanessa was scared. She'd seen how these cases could turn ugly. Yet she held fast to Kayla's confidence and the evidence they had. The videos, eyewitness accounts, time-stamped footage placing Vanessa far from the thefts she was accused of. The law was on their side, or so they hoped. As the lawsuit advanced, Kayla began to suspect there was more to the story than simple racial profiling. She dug into the details of the alleged shopliftings that started the entire ordeal. One by one, she interviewed store managers, cross-checked with police records, and requested business camera footage from the days leading up to Vanessa's confrontation. A puzzle started to form. Many of the targeted items were high-end electronics or jewelry, suggesting a well-coordinated effort. A local electronics store owner mentioned that the thieves seemed far too organized to be amateurs. Another said they suspected an inside job, but the cops dismissed it. The biggest bombshell came when Kayla stumbled upon a rumor circulating among some Glendale precinct officers. Whispers suggested that O'Leary might be tied to a small-time fencing operation, someone who offloaded stolen goods in secret. It was all hearsay, but Kayla wondered if O'Leary had used Vanessa as a convenient scapegoat to deflect suspicion from the real culprits. Kayla confronted the precinct's legal counsel with these rumors. Predictably, they denied everything. But Kayla's private investigator uncovered a minor police clerk who was willing to speak off the record. O'Leary's been acting strange for months, hanging around with questionable people outside bars. He's had money issues, lots of gambling debts. The clerk divulged. I'm not saying he's a thief, but something's off. Folks have been talking. This new angle could explode the case wide open. If O'Leary were complicit in the thefts, then his harassment of Vanessa wasn't just racial profiling. It might have been a deliberate move to create a suspect out of thin air. Kayla's investigation deepened. She didn't tell Vanessa everything yet, not wanting to raise false hopes without conclusive evidence. The first major legal milestone was the deposition, a chance for both sides to question witnesses under oath before trial. Vanessa arrived at the law offices accompanied by Kayla, wearing a simple blazer and slacks. Her grandmother had come up from South Carolina to support her, but waited in the lobby, fearing she'd only complicate Vanessa's nerves. In the deposition room, city attorneys and police union lawyers sat across from Kayla, wearing stern expressions. Seated at the far end was Officer O'Leary, his face stone cold, and Officer Mendez, who looked visibly uncomfortable. Vanessa felt her heart racing but forced herself to remain composed. Kayla had prepped her well. She took the oath and answered all questions calmly. About her background, her routine, where she was the day of the alleged thefts, the confrontation on the street. Then it was Kayla's turn. She questioned O'Leary first. He stated through gritted teeth that he had reasonable suspicion to believe Vanessa matched the description of a shoplifter. Kayla pressed him on the specifics. Who gave the description? What was the exact clothing? Did Vanessa's timeline not check out? And so on. O'Leary offered vague answers, often resorting to "I don't recall," or "it was in the official report." Next, she asked about the assault. O'Leary insisted Vanessa had resisted, that she'd refused to comply, forcing him to use minimal force. Kayla then presented the video from bystanders, pausing at key frames that showed Vanessa pinned against the cruiser. "Can you point out where she was resisting here?" Kayla asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. O'Leary squirmed but kept silent. City attorneys objected, claiming Kayla was badgering the witness, but the damage was done. Mendez's deposition was even more revealing. Though he tried to align his story with O'Leary's, the city attorneys grew visibly anxious whenever Mendez hesitated. At one point, Kayla asked point blank, "Officer Mendez, did you feel Officer O'Leary was using excessive force on Miss Harrington?" Mendez's jaw worked. He stared at the table before replying, I had concerns that day." A hush fell over the room. O'Leary shot Mendez a furious glare. Kayla nodded. "Thank you, Officer Mendez. That's all I needed." If O'Leary was angry before, he became enraged after Mendez's deposition. A few nights later, as Vanessa was locking up her apartment, her phone chimed with an unknown number. She answered cautiously, and a deep, gravelly voice came through. "You think you're going to get away with ruining a cop's life?" the caller said, breathing heavily. "People like you don't last in this city." Vanessa's blood ran cold. "Who is this?" The caller laughed darkly. "Watch your back." Then the line went dead. Shaken, Vanessa immediately reported the threat to Kayla, who in turn notified the authorities. Kayla also requested additional police protection, or at least some measure of security for Vanessa, but ironically, Glendale Precinct was responsible for that jurisdiction. Vanessa didn't trust them. Kayla decided to hire a private security guard to keep an eye on Vanessa's building at night. Mendez, meanwhile, seemed to grow more distant from O'Leary. Word on the street was that Internal Affairs had begun investigating their conduct. O'Leary's potential link to a fencing ring had not been proven, but rumors continued to swirl. Vanessa's grandmother insisted on staying with her for a while, cooking hot meals and offering emotional support. In their cramped apartment, the older woman read her Bible out loud, reciting verses of strength and justice. Each night, Vanessa listened, finding solace in her grandmother's unwavering faith. In contrast to the threats and negativity, the community's outpouring of support uplifted Vanessa. One weekend, a group of activists organized a peaceful march through Market Street, ending outside the Glendale precinct. Chants rang out, calling for accountability, an end to racial profiling, and justice for Vanessa Harrington. Though Vanessa felt overwhelmed by the attention, she was moved by the sight of so many people, Black, white, Asian, Latino, standing in solidarity. Local media covered the march extensively. Vanessa gave a brief interview to a reporter, standing beside Kayla. "I'm not looking for vengeance," she said into the microphone. "I just want to live my life without fear, without being judged for the color of my skin. I want justice, not just for me, but for anyone who's been harassed by those who should protect us." In the days following, Gina texted to share that even more customers were asking about Vanessa's well-being, offering kind notes and small donations. Leonard, the mailman, dropped by with a letter from an anonymous supporter who included a gift card to a local grocery store, urging Vanessa to stay strong. On social media, a crowdfunding campaign launched by an activist group quickly raised a few $1,000s to help Vanessa offset living and legal expenses. Vanessa was astonished by the generosity. She felt emboldened. Despite the fear and the trauma, she realized she had an entire community behind her. Months of depositions, hearings, and legal maneuvering culminated in a court date for the civil lawsuit. Tension rippled through Philadelphia. News outlets ran stories counting down the days until the high-profile trial. The morning of the trial, Vanessa woke before dawn. Her grandmother helped her into a black skirt suit, fussing over every wrinkle. They prayed together in hushed tones, asking for strength and justice. Then Kayla's driver picked them up, ferrying them to the courthouse in the crisp early light. Camera crews lined the steps outside the imposing white columns of the building. Shouts from reporters and curious onlookers filled the air. Vanessa's stomach churned with nerves, but she kept her head high, grandmother's arm linked with hers. Kayla escorted them through the throng, ignoring shouted questions. Inside the courtroom, the city's legal team sat with O'Leary and Mendez. O'Leary looked tense, jaw clenched, occasionally whispering to his attorney. Mendez appeared even more uncomfortable, avoiding O'Leary's gaze. The judge, a stern-faced woman named Judge Rebecca Saunders, called for order. Opening statements began. The city's attorney argued that the officers had acted within their rights, following leads on a potential thief, and that any force used was necessary to ensure officer safety. They insisted that Vanessa's accusations were overblown and that the video didn't capture the totality of the situation. Kayla's opening statement was succinct and powerful. She described Vanessa as a hard-working citizen with no criminal history, singled out and terrorized by officers acting on prejudice. She portrayed O'Leary as a man with a pattern of aggressive tactics, pointing to the earlier complaints. She cited the video evidence that contradicted the officer's claims of resisting arrest. Finally, she mentioned the possibility of other motivations at play, hinting that O'Leary had reasons beyond racism to pin crimes on Vanessa, though she didn't fully detail the rumor of his involvement in fencing stolen goods. The stage was set for a dramatic showdown. One by one, witnesses took the stand. Gina Martinez, who attested to Vanessa's work ethic and the suspicious manner in which the officers approached her at the bookstore. Leonard the mailman, verifying Vanessa's whereabouts during lunch breaks. Several bystanders from the night of Vanessa's assault, who each recounted seeing no sign of resistance. They described O'Leary's violent outburst, some even reenacting the moment he pinned her to the cruiser. Then came the video evidence. The jury watched closely as the grainy footage showed an unarmed Vanessa being shoved and manhandled. The room grew tense. The city's lawyers tried to argue the angle was incomplete, but Kayla paused the footage at critical frames. Vanessa's distressed face, O'Leary's aggressive posture, and the visual told a damning story. When O'Leary took the stand, his demeanor was defensive and combative. He insisted Vanessa had reached into her purse, and he feared she had a weapon. Kayla pounced, forcing him to admit he hadn't actually seen a weapon. He had no evidence to back his claim. Mendez's testimony was the turning point. Under oath, he finally admitted that he felt uncomfortable with how O'Leary treated Vanessa. He stammered, I believed we should have called for a female officer, or handled the situation differently. She didn't seem like a threat to me. Kayla pressed, So you believed Officer O'Leary was using too much force? Mendez nodded, eyes downcast. Yes. A hushed murmur spread through the courtroom. O'Leary glared daggers at his partner. The city's attorney tried to spin it, but the damage was done. After days of testimony, closing arguments ended. Vanessa sat in the courtroom, holding her grandmother's hand, Kayla on her other side. The jury filed out to deliberate. Time crawled. An hour passed, then 2. Tension weighed heavily on everyone. Finally, the jury returned. The foreperson stood, clearing his throat. On the matter of Vanessa Harrington versus officers James O'Leary, Carlos Mendez, the Glendale Police Precinct, and the City of Philadelphia, we find in favor of the plaintiff, Miss Harrington. Damages awarded. $1 million in compensatory damages. ****. A collective gasp echoed through the courtroom. Vanessa's eyes welled with tears. Kayla placed a comforting hand on her back, whispering, We did it. You did it. The foreperson continued. Additionally, we recommend further investigation into Officer O'Leary's conduct, including previous complaints and any potential criminal wrongdoing. Judge Saunders thanked the jury and adjourned the court. Pandemonium erupted in the gallery. Reporters clamored for statements, microphones thrust forward. O'Leary stormed out, face livid, while Mendez hung back, seemingly resigned. Kayla guided Vanessa and her grandmother through the chaos, refusing to comment until they were safely in the hallway. Outside, the crowd cheered. Activists, supporters, neighbors, the same faces who marched for her, converged, chanting her name. Vanessa, overwhelmed, managed a small wave. She caught sight of Gina, who was jumping up and down, tears of joy on her cheeks. Kayla stepped up to a cluster of reporters, her voice resonating. Today's verdict sends a powerful message. Racial profiling, harassment, and unnecessary force have no place in our communities. We hope this encourages other victims to speak out and seek justice. Vanessa was asked to speak. She swallowed hard, stepping to the makeshift podium of microphones. I'm grateful for my attorney, my family, my community, she began, voice trembling. This lawsuit was never just about money. It was about showing that we won't be silenced. My hope is that we can build a city where no one is afraid of the people sworn to protect us. Thank you. A roar of applause followed. The cameras flashed. In the surge of relief, Vanessa felt a profound sense of validation, her dignity restored. The city had recognized her truth, and O'Leary, who had terrorized her, would finally face accountability. In the weeks following the verdict, the Glendale precinct announced that O'Leary was under internal investigation. Rumors swirled that more officers might be implicated in either covering up O'Leary's actions or engaging in misconduct themselves. Community pressure led to calls for the precinct's chief to step down, though he refused. Mendez faced disciplinary action for failing to intervene sooner, but he cooperated with investigators, potentially mitigating his punishment. Vanessa couldn't say she forgave him, but she recognized his testimony helped secure her victory. Vanessa used a portion of the settlement to relocate to a safer neighborhood and to help pay her grandmother's medical bills. She also donated some funds to local civil rights organizations and set up a small scholarship for underprivileged Black youth interested in baking or culinary arts. And then there was the bakery, her dream. With Kayla's guidance, Vanessa found a charming storefront near downtown Philly. She signed the lease and began renovations, aiming to create a cozy neighborhood spot featuring her signature cupcakes and cornbread treats. She named it Vanessa's Homestyle Confections and planned a grand opening that following spring. Local press covered the bakery's progress, hailing Vanessa as a symbol of resilience. Many Philadelphia residents pledged to be her first customers, eager to support a woman who had bravely taken on the system and won. The emotional scars of her ordeal lingered. Some nights, Vanessa still jolted awake from nightmares of O'Leary pinning her against the cruiser. Therapy sessions and the unwavering love from her grandmother and friends helped her heal. The $1 million settlement, while life-changing, paled in comparison to the intangible cost of her trauma. Yet, in the quiet moments, she allowed herself to feel proud. She hadn't let them break her. She turned pain into a fight for justice and emerged victorious. Through it all, she discovered her own courage and the power of community solidarity. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she knew she would face them head-on, propelled by the memory of a courtroom where truth finally prevailed. Thank you for staying with us through this powerful story of injustice, resilience, and ultimate triumph. Vanessa Harrington's journey is a testament to standing up for what's right, no matter the odds. Faced with racial profiling, false accusations, and shocking police brutality, she could have given up. Instead, she fought back. And not just for herself, but for everyone who's ever felt marginalized or silenced. Her hard-won victory in court sent ripples through a city and sparked conversations that continue to this day. As she opens her dream bakery, she reminds us all that hope can rise from hardship and that change starts with a single determined voice. If you found inspiration in Vanessa's story, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support spreads awareness and fuels more stories that shine a light on truth and justice. Together, let's keep these conversations alive.